You're all very welcome, folks. I guess it's really our second part of this evening, beginning with Johnny Sullivan, Nora Duggan, and Saray Sanchez, who will be performing a performance paper. And I'm going to learn something from this. I'm going to learn. I would love to do a performance paper, so I'm going to learn what is it, how do you do it, and it's lovely to work in this space with a team as well. Threads of Care, Mourning, ThroughTextiles as a collective political action. So very, very welcome to this performance space, this legacy of so many people in this room. Alistair McClellan has performed here, and Rona Lawson will be following this performance as well. So you're very, very welcome, and we look forward to receiving the gifts that you're going to be using.
I have some things to fill, so
welcome everyone. Well, first, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about this artillery we have here in the corner. It was made during the workshop Disruptive Women in Dairy in 2023. A workshop in which I participated for the first time with a conflict textiles workshop. It was my first time in dairy, and little did I know that the women I was asking directions to get to the place of the workshop were, in fact, Roberta, Pilar, and Manoli, the women who were giving the workshop. So that's how I met Roberta. This experience marked me significantly. I met such lovely people, and I became interested, very interested in exploring further ways, the ways our collective making of textiles produce and share plural knowledges. So interested that I decided to continue my studies with a PhD, and that's what I am researching now. Nora and I are my supervisors, and they're doing with me this performance. They're taking the risk. They trust me a lot. So this piece represents women who have dared to break ground, to confront systems in order to change the unjust. Between its threads, the loss and grief of struggles and memories are revealed. The making of it was the starting point to discover other groundbreaking, transforming, and empower women who dared to stitch migrants, refugees, survivors. So that was the starting point of me starting to build up this little, I wouldn't say network, I would say community of women that we share interest in sharing not just knowledge but life experiences. So this is an experimental performance which examines the relationship between mourning, materiality, textile production, and the senses. As we grieve, love and loss are intermingled. Feelings and emotions battle to make sense. Our vulnerability at its best. Mourning, in terms of Judith Butler, is a constitutive experience of the self. That means it is not just a reaction to loss, but a transformation of identity. That's why, in losing someone or something, we come to feel that we lose a part of ourselves. Because grief reveals us our interdependence and vulnerability. The experience of loss, according to Ben Hooks, helps us to grow and connect emotionally. However, in a world that pressures us to live more and more in haste, we are often forced to move on too quickly instead of fully experiencing and processing our grief. This is how the interdependence of life is ignored, so separateness and individual gain can be deified. The avoidance or political silence of grief often urges us to reflect more deeply on our relationality and place of enunciation. Rather than experiencing loss as isolation, Cristina Rivera Garza, Mexican writer, suggests that grieving can open up new forms of community. Sharing grief by creating collectively in dialogue with others can turn it into a creative and political process. Adopting an attitude of openness to sensitivity and transformation allows us to experience grief in a way that generates new forms of community and resistance. Acknowledging layers of time, voices, and overlapping experiences in a way that is neither rigid nor linear, but allows for openness to multiple affects and subjectivities. In this sense, grief can be a door to what Sully Ronnie, Brazilian, calls uma nova solidariedade, a new thread softly, a state of being that brings us into deep connection with our emotions and with the other, human or not. In this capitalist and patriarchal world system that relentlessly promotes a numbness of bodies, blocking the ability to feel and connect with affects, a new thread softly demands from us more receptive and less violent ways of existing in the world. In this sense, the radical potential of textiles allows us for new forms of collective enunciation, memory, and grief. Collective objects can form a powerful mode of remembrance, mourning, and catharsis through interwoven signifiers that stack over time and space. Creating from threads requires patience, cadence, attention, and care. By mourning through weaving, sewing, embroidering, knitting, etc. together, the grief becomes shared rather than privatized, enhancing textiles as a potential tool for building both community and solidarity. When thinking about the cases you will hear next, we wanted to highlight the character of mourning as a transformative rather than destructive practice, as an openness to the desire and possibility of reinventing life beyond dominant structures. We do this in the hope of fostering a practice of caring for the traces of others, and as an opportunity to rethink our relationality and ways of being and making in the world that are not based on violence or exclusion. So we invite you to close your eyes, and for the next few minutes, let yourself be transported by senses that are not normally dominant. Some words may be in Spanish, but don't worry. You can take the translations you have in your hands with you afterwards. So keep your eyes closed. Make yourself comfortable. And let's take 3 deep breaths. Inhale. Exhale through your nose. Again, inhale through your nose. Exhale through your nose. Last one. Inhale deeply. And exhale. Now, let's allow ourselves to be fully present in this moment. Disruptive women, presence and refuge. A workshop. space for reflection, where raising our voices is music and noise. Our hands stitching stories.
The rhythm and clatter of the loom are as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. A song I have known since childhood, passed down from my mother and to her from hers. With each throw of the shuttle, I pull the past into the present, binding it into the fabric.
Relating to others, but it's always a methodical act. Mindfulness of this vulnerability can become the basis of claims for non-military political solutions, but in the same way, right? A denial of this vulnerability through some kind of fantasy of a mastery, right? Doesn't this just fuel instruments of war? We must attend to, no. We must abide to our vulnerabilities. Staying with corporal vulnerability means reaching out alongside ourselves to the others who are holding us up.
México, Chile, Ireland, Afghanistan, Iraq, France, and France. Cathartic assemblies. We saw those that look like me, like you, like your sister, like our mothers and grandmothers. Women persecuted, punished, silenced, imposed horror, a burden on the back. Disrupted women gather and mingle, sharing time through the threads, remembering, naming, honoring life, the air, the soil, the what, all that has preceded us.
I sit before the loom, my fingers guiding the warped threads. Long, tugged strands like the strings of an invisible instrument. Each one must hit its note while holding firm.
Perhaps one mourns when one accepts that by the loss one undergoes, one's going to be changed. Maybe forever. Perhaps mourning has to do with agreeing to undergo a transformation, or maybe even submitting to a transformation, the full result of which we really can't know in advance.
Of malination and care. A space for unheard stories where raising one's voice is music and noise. presence, and refuge.
Today I weave with deep indigo and soft gold, the glowing colours after a long summer day. The weft waits beside me, wound tightly around the shuttle. I pick it up, feeling the smoothness of the yarn between my fingers. The wool was spun by my sister and dyed by my auntie, in vats that stained her hands blue for days. I think of them now in the fading light.
There is losing. There is losing, we know that. But there's also the transformative effect of loss, and this can't be charted or planned. Maybe it's this lack of chartability that positions grief and mourning as the sites that have not yet collapsed into some kind of neoliberal quantification project. Then again, maybe the next iWatch is going to tell me when I'm finished with mourning, you know, a little ding to let you know that you're done missing someone.
I vividly remember Jaco's words as he finished the last stitches on his arpillera doll. My doll represents my sister and her baby. As I was sewing it, I was thinking about the stories of Afghans living in the diaspora, particularly her, my sister.
With a practiced motion, I sent the shuttle flying through the open space between the shed and catch it on the other side. I pull the beater forward, pressing the new row into place, tightening the weave. I repeat the act, over and over. Each pass whispers in the air.
When we lose certain people, when we're dispossessed from a place or a community, we may simply feel that we're undergoing something temporary. But mourning will be over, right? Some restoration of prior order will be achieved. But maybe when we undergo what we do, something about who we are is revealed. Something that delineates the ties we have to others. And that shows that these ties constitute what we are. They're what composes us. The I doesn't really exist any more than a singular thread in a shirt, sometimes visible before returning to the mesh.
I had never heard of Mampuhan until I met Juana. Colombia, Mexico, Ireland. Stitching our stories was the theme of that workshop. And we sat at 3 tables, about 20 women, and one told us her story, showed us her story, shared her story. Each one of us pulled on a thread, and we began to stitch our own stories out loud, under our breath, and sometimes in silence. We sought, unpicked, and soldered. We recognized ourselves in each other. No details were necessary. The textiles said it all.
The cloth grows beneath my hands. I pause to stretch my fingers, tracing the texture of the fabric. It is warm to the touch. This weave will outlive my hands. It may clothe a child. It might drape across a family table. It may provide comfort in the cold.
When we lose, so do others. The self dissolves in the recognition of, well, their grief too. So let's face it, right? We're undone by each other. And if we're not, then we're missing something. This is obvious when it comes to grief, but I guess that's only possible because it was already the case with desire. One does not always stay intact. You might want to. You might even manage it for a while. But despite the best efforts, one is undone by the other. By the touch, by the scent, by the feeling, by the prospect of touch, by the memory of the feel. We're strong because we're vulnerable, fragmented, not monoliths.
And so I return to my loom, the steady rhythm carrying me forward, thread by thread.
El problema empezó cuando llegaron unas personas a querer quitarme mi terreno, said Candelaria, as she threaded the needle so that the other women would know. What she was asking them to do was to organize themselves to defend their territories, convinced that together they will be stronger. The women from the 3 communities met, sewed their clothes, shared their life stories, and gave each other advice. Defend, resist. Defend and keep resisting. Si nosotras no cuidamos el lugar donde sembramos, se acaba todo. Se acaba el agua, el bosque, las medicinas, los quelites y los animales, said Anacleta. The dresses, those that were sewing, far from being neutral objects adorning the body, contain stories that reveal the interconnections between culture, community, locality, and resistance. He recibido muchas amenazas por defender mi territorio, pero yo no me voy de aquí hasta que me muera. Candelaria ended the conversation. Catalina told me that Candelaria had left this world. The heart hurts, the body's heavy, but the echo of her words remains sewn into the fabric of her dress, of the land, the wind, the water, the plants. Your eyes. Let's take another 2 breaths. Inhale and exhale. Once more. Inhale and exhale. And little by little, start moving your body feel your presence. And whenever you're ready, open your eyes. Look around you. Look who's next to you. What do you feel? What do you feel they feel? What do you want to share just with them? Silent smile. Making textiles with others is a form of mourning that allows us to recognize the interconnection between the past, the present, and the future, between loss, collective memory, and hope. Grieving, materialized in the shape of fabrics, and the act of making such textile objects, represent in itself acts of resistance in the face of the numbness and invisibility imposed by a global dominant system. The engagement in collective textile work fosters the creation of spaces in which mourning is not only personal, but a gesture of solidarity and social transformation. A refuge. Grieving, beyond being just an experience of loss, can be a tool for transformation and resistance if we embrace it with fully awareness of care by allowing us to feel, connect, and share grief. It is possible to generate more supportive forms of community and to problematize the structures that promote not only the disembodiment of grief, but also the hierarchization of suffering. The few names mentioned in this performance and all those involved in making this textile, this atelier we have in front of us, possible, shows us that instead of denying grief, we should embrace it to create solidarity. Their testimonies, thoughts, and memories suggest that instead of responding to loss with violence or apathy, we could use grief to rethink our local and global interconnections and to build more equitable and ethical relationships.